I was a good husband, faithful, caring, trusted my wife, didn't ask unnecessary questions. And then one evening she said, "I'm pregnant, but the baby is not yours." I thought it was the worst thing I could hear, but I kept my cool and told her this in this story. You ever wake up one day and realize that everything you thought was real was a damn lie? That's what happened to me. My name is Jack Turner. I'm a simple man, never asked for much. I had a steady job, a beautiful home, and a wife I thought loved me. We had a son together, 10 years old, bright kid. My whole world revolved around my family. I worked hard, stayed loyal, and always put them first. I never saw what was coming. Looking back, maybe I should have paid more attention. There were signs, little things that didn't seem like much at the time. Late nights at work that turned into overnight stays. A shift in her attitude, like she was annoyed by my presence. The way she kept her phone glued to her hand, smiling at messages she never cared to share. But I was a trusting man. I believed in my wife. Her name was Laura. We'd been married 15 years, built a life together from scratch. She was the kind of woman who could light up a room when she wanted to. Smart, charming, beautiful. But I guess that was the problem. She knew how to make people believe whatever she wanted them to. The first real crack in our marriage came on a night that should have been ordinary. I had just gotten home from work, tired, ready to sit down with my son and help him with his homework. I was halfway through explaining fractions when I heard the front door open. Laura walked in looking different. Her hair was freshly done. Makeup a little too perfect for someone who was supposed to be working late. "Hey," I said, glancing up from the kitchen table. "You're home early." She hesitated for a split second before smiling. "Yeah, got done faster than I thought." I nodded, but something felt off. The smell of cologne that wasn't mine clung to her clothes. She walked over to our son, ruffled his hair, then kissed my cheek. That was the first time I felt it. The doubt. But I pushed it aside. I wasn't some insecure fool who jumped to conclusions over a bad feeling. I let it go. But the doubts, they didn't stop. Over the next few weeks, Laura's behavior became stranger. She was always on edge, always distracted. When she looked at me, it wasn't with love. It was with something else. Something colder. I tried to talk to her about it once. "You okay?" "Yeah, just tired." "You've been acting different." "Jack, please. I have a lot on my mind." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But that nagging feeling wouldn't let go. So one night, when she left her phone on the kitchen counter, I did something I'd never done before. I looked through it. She had messages from a number with no name. Him. "Can't wait to see you again." Her, "Me too. I miss you already." A few nights later, she said she had a meeting. I followed her, kept my distance, watched as she parked her car behind some rundown motel on the outskirts of town. And then, I saw him, a man, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed too sharp for a cheap place like that. He was waiting for her, and when she stepped out of the car, she ran to him, wrapped her arms around him like she used to do with me. I wanted to storm over there, tear him apart with my bare hands. But I didn't, because I needed to know everything. I needed to know how deep this betrayal ran. After that night outside the motel, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to know exactly what I was up against. I acted like nothing had changed. I kissed her goodbye in the mornings, had dinner with her at night, made small talk about our son's school projects. And then, she made her move. It was a Friday evening when she walked into the house, her expression unreadable. I was in the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of bourbon when she called my name. "Jack." There was something in her voice, something final. I turned to look at her. She was standing stiff, her hands clenched at her sides. And then she said it. "I'm pregnant." The world around me froze. My grip tightened on the glass. My heart pounded in my ears. "Pregnant." I set the glass down, swallowed hard. "Is it mine?" She didn't answer. A sick, twisted smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "No." But before I could say another word, the front door swung open, and he walked in. The man from the motel. Tall, arrogant, wearing a smug grin like he had already won. He strolled in like he owned the place, like he had been waiting for this moment. And Laura? She didn't stop him. "What the hell is this?" I growled. The man chuckled, shaking his head. "Relax, Jack. No need to get worked up." He walked over to Laura, draped an arm around her shoulders. "We just wanted to do this the right way." I turned to Laura, my voice low, trembling with barely controlled rage. "You bring him into my house?" It's not your house anymore. I took a step closer, but the man raised a hand, stopping me. Easy there, big guy, he said, his tone dripping with condescension. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. We've been planning this for months, Jack. I stared at him, at her. My mind raced. Months? He leaned against the counter, casual, like this was just another business deal. See, Laura and we've got something good. And you? You're in the way. Laura's voice was calm, calculated. We want to handle this amicably, Jack. If you fight this, it won't end well for you. I let out a sharp laugh. Amicably? My voice dripped with venom. You've been screwing around behind my back, and now you're standing in my kitchen telling me? The man stepped forward, just enough to be in my space. Look, he said, his voice low, threatening. I'm not gonna repeat myself. You're gonna make this easy, or things are gonna get ugly. You walk away, sign what needs to be signed, and let us handle the rest. I could smell his cologne. Expensive, overpowering. The same scent that clung to Laura that night she came home late. I exhaled slowly, forced myself to step back. Fine, I said, keeping my voice even. You want to handle this the easy way? Fine. You ever feel like you're watching your own life from the outside? Like you're stuck in some twisted nightmare, but no matter how many times you blink, you can't wake up? That's how I felt standing in my own kitchen, listening to my wife and her lover tell me, without a hint of shame, that they had been plotting against me for months. That night I barely slept. Not because of the betrayal, that part I had already suspected. No, what kept me up was the way they spoke, the confidence in their voices. They weren't just asking me to walk away. They were sure I would. Like they had already accounted for every move I might make. And that meant one thing. They had something on me. Or at least they thought they did. I wasn't about to roll over and let them ruin my life. So I did what any man in my position would do. I had a buddy, Travis, who worked in private security. Knew his way around surveillance, digital forensics, all that. I called him up the next morning and told him everything. Damn, Jack, he muttered. You sure you want to go down this road? They're planning something, I said. I need to know what. Travis didn't hesitate. All right, first things first. Do you have access to her computer, her phone? I smirked bitterly. She's been real careful about her phone lately. Always has it on her. Then we go old school, Travis said. Financials. Paper trails. You'd be surprised how sloppy people get when they think they're untouchable. That afternoon, while Laura was out, I went through everything. Bank statements, emails, credit card transactions. At first, it was what you'd expect. Hotel stays, expensive dinners, jewelry I sure as hell never saw. But then I found something that made my stomach drop. A wire transfer. $10,000. Sent from our joint account. And the recipient? A name I didn't recognize. Bryce Maddox. I didn't know who he was, but I knew one thing. Laura never moved that kind of money without telling me. I sent the name to Travis. An hour later he called me back, his voice tight. You're not gonna like this. Turns out Bryce Maddox wasn't just some random guy. He was an investigator. Private investigator. And he had been hired 2 months ago. She hired a PI? To follow me? That's what it looks like, Travis said. Now either she was looking for dirt, or, he hesitated, or she's setting something up. I didn't have anything to hide. No affairs. No shady business. Nothing that would justify hiring a damn investigator. So if Laura was paying this guy, it wasn't to find something. I waited until Laura was asleep, her phone resting on the nightstand. Then carefully I took it. Travis had given me a simple trick. If the phone had Face ID, all I had to do was hold it up to her face while she slept. It worked. The screen unlocked, and I went straight to her messages. And that's when I found it. A conversation with her lover. I think he's getting suspicious. Let him. Won't matter soon. We need to move faster. The lawyer said we just need one more thing to lock it in. Already working on it. Once it's done, he won't have a choice. My hands shook as I scrolled further. There were messages to Bryce Maddox too. Laura, did you get what I asked for? Bryce, not yet. But don't worry. We'll make it happen. Laura, good. I need this divorce to go exactly as planned. I exhaled slowly, my heart pounding. Laura wasn't just leaving me. She was setting me up. But for what? The next morning I made a decision. I was done playing along. So I confronted her. I waited until she was in the kitchen, sipping her coffee, pretending like she hadn't stabbed me in the back. I walked in, set her phone down on the table. Didn't sleep too well last night, I said casually. You? She glanced at her phone. The slightest flicker of tension crossed her face. What do you want, Jack? I folded my arms. I know about Bryce Maddox. The color drained from her face. 2 months ago, I continued, you hired a private investigator. Not to find out if I was cheating. No, you needed him for something else. I took a step closer. Tell me, Laura, what exactly were you trying to set me up for? She swallowed hard. But before she could answer, the front door opened, and he walked in. Her lover. This time he didn't look so smug. He looked nervous, which meant one thing. I wasn't the only one who had figured something out. Jack, he said, forcing a smile. Maybe we should all sit down and... I cut him off. Save it. I turned back to Laura. Tell me what you did. Now. She hesitated. Then, she sighed, shaking her head. It doesn't matter now, she muttered. Oh, I think it does. She exhaled sharply. Then, slowly, her lips curled into a cold, almost amused smile. You always thought I needed you, didn't you, Jack? She said softly. That I was just some devoted little wife, waiting for you to come home every night? She leaned forward, her eyes dark. I haven't needed you for a long time. I felt my jaw tighten. So that's what this is about? I said. You're just bored? You want out. So you decide to burn my life to the ground on your way out the door. She smirked. You don't even know the half of it. And then, she dropped the real bombshell. It's not just me, Jack. She glanced at her lover, then back at me. You're not the only one we've done this to. Betrayal cuts deep, but deception? That's what really destroys a man. Standing in my own damn kitchen, watching my wife smirk at me like I was some idiot who never saw it coming, I realized something. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. What the hell do you mean I'm not the only one? Laura's lover, this smug bastard who had waltzed into my house like he owned it, shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't so cocky anymore. Laura, though? She was still smiling. I mean, she said, sipping her coffee like this was just another morning, that you're not the first man to go through this. She gestured toward her lover. And he's not the first man I've done it with. You've done this before? 3 times, actually. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. 3 times. Meaning there were 3 other men out there who had been blindsided just like I was. My mind was racing now, putting the pieces together. Laura never had a real career, just short-term jobs, always quitting after a year or 2. She'd met me when I was already doing well, settled into my house, and made herself comfortable. And now that she was done with me, she was trying to clean me out before moving on to the next poor bastard. You're a goddamn con artist, I muttered. That's a little harsh, Jack. But her lover? He wasn't saying a word, because he had just realized something too. I turned to him. Let me guess, I said, voice low, cold. You think she loves you, right? He didn't answer. Laura rolled her eyes. Oh, please. I kept my eyes on him. Let me tell you how this plays out, pal. She gets you to help her ruin me. She takes half of everything, maybe more. You feel like the big man, thinking you've won. I paused, letting the words sink in. And then, a few years down the road, she does the same damn thing to you. Shut up, he muttered. Deep down, you know I'm right. I needed more. Real proof. If Laura had done this before, there had to be a pattern. And that's when I remembered the name Bryce Maddox, the private investigator she hired to set me up. If she had used him before, then there had to be a record. So I took a shot in the dark. While Laura and her lover were still staring each other down, I grabbed my phone, stepped out of the kitchen, and called Travis. Tell me something, I said, voice low. Bryce Maddox? Does he have a history? Travis didn't even hesitate. Oh yeah, he said. Guy's been sued twice for falsifying reports. Got caught once working with a woman on a divorce case. Turns out, she paid him to fabricate evidence against her husband. You got names? I asked. Travis sent me a file within minutes. And there it was. The woman's name was Laura. Different last name, but same damn woman. I had everything I needed now. I walked back into the kitchen, phone in hand. Laura looked up, arching an eyebrow. Have a nice call? She asked mockingly. I ignored her. Instead, I turned to her lover. Hey, buddy, I said. Tell me something. Does the name Bryce Maddox mean anything to you? His brows furrowed. What? I chuckled, shaking my head. You don't even know, do you? I turned my phone toward him, showing him the screen. Your girlfriend here has been using the same dirty investigator to set up every one of her ex-husbands. And guess what? You're next. His face paled. Bullshit, Laura snapped, but her voice wasn't so steady anymore. I scrolled down, reading from the file. First husband? Dr. Michael Carter. She set him up for infidelity, walked away with half his assets. Second guy? Richard Evans. Accused him of domestic abuse. Got a settlement and a restraining order. I looked up at her lover. You sure you're not just the next idiot on her list? He turned to Laura, his expression shifting. Is this true? Don't listen to him, she snapped. He's just trying to turn you against me. Travis, I said, dialing my friend on speaker. Tell this guy what you just told me. Travis's voice came through loud and clear. Your girlfriend has been running a scam for years, pal. Every guy she's ever been with, she's ruined them. And she's using the same damn playbook on Jack. The bastard exploded. You bitch, he roared, turning on Laura. You used me? Laura stepped back, eyes flashing with panic. Baby, no. Don't call me that, he snapped. His face was twisted in rage. You were gonna do this to me too. And just like that, their little alliance? It was over. Laura tried to recover. She turned to me, eyes wild. Jack, she said quickly. We don't have to do this. We can. I held up my phone. I recorded everything, I said coldly. Her face went pale. I looked at her lover, who was still seething, fists clenched. And you, I added, you might want to get yourself a good lawyer, because I have no doubt she's already got some dirt on you, too. He hesitated. Then, without another word, he stormed out. Laura was left standing there, alone. For the first time, she was the one with nothing. I turned and walked away, heading for the door. Jack, she shouted. You can't do this. There's a moment in every war when the tide turns. For months, I had been in the dark, blind to the betrayal happening right under my nose. But now I had everything I needed. Proof that Laura had been running a scam. Not just on me, but on every man before me. And after exposing her in front of her latest lover, I walked away. The next morning, I met with my lawyer. His name was Phil. A sharp, no-nonsense guy who had seen every dirty trick in the book. When I laid everything out for him, the secret bank transfers, the messages I had found, the recorded confession of Laura's scams, he leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. Well, damn, Jack. He shook his head. This is worse than I thought. Tell me what I need to do. My voice was steady, but inside, I was still boiling. Phil straightened up. All right, first things first, we freeze all joint accounts. If she's planning to drain you, we make sure she doesn't get a dime more than what the court allows. I nodded. Next, he continued, we file for divorce immediately, on the grounds of fraud and infidelity. Normally, divorce settlements take time, but with the evidence you've got, the judge won't look kindly on her. That was good, but not good enough. I want her buried, I said coldly. Legally, financially, I want her to walk away with nothing. Phil gave me a knowing look. Then we go after her assets, too. If she's got hidden money, we'll find it. He tapped the folder with my evidence. And with this, we've got enough leverage to destroy her credibility. That was what I needed to hear. By the time I left his office, the paperwork was already in motion. But Laura? She wasn't going down without a fight. That night, I was sitting in my living room, a glass of bourbon in my hand, when I heard the knock. Not a casual knock. A hard, deliberate one. I set the glass down and opened the door. 2 police officers stood on my porch. Jack Turner? One of them asked. I kept my face neutral. That's me. The officer sighed. We need you to come with us. I stiffened. For what? Your wife filed a report against you, he said. Domestic abuse allegations. Laura was desperate. And this was her final, pathetic attempt to turn the tables. I didn't argue. I didn't resist. I let them take me down to the station, let them sit me in that cold little interrogation room. And when the detective walked in, I spoke first. Before you say anything, I said, leaning back in my chair, you should probably listen to this. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and played the recording. Laura's voice filled the room. It's not just me, Jack. You're not the only one we've done this to. Your girlfriend has been running a scam for years, pal. The detective's face darkened. I watched as he listened to every damning word. The moment he heard Laura's voice admitting to her scheme, I saw the shift. He knew. I wasn't the bad guy here. By the time the recording ended, he let out a slow breath. "Jack," he said, his tone calmer now. "Give me a few minutes." He stepped out of the room. And when he came back, I walked out of that station a free man. Laura's false allegations? Dropped. Her credibility? Shattered. And now the law was turning its eyes on her. The next morning, my lawyer called me. "You're gonna love this," Phil said, amusement in his voice. "What?" "Laura's in deep shit." I sat up. "How deep?" Phil chuckled. "Turns out you weren't the only one who got the police involved. After you played that recording, the cops started digging." I grinned. "And she's under criminal investigation." Now that was satisfying. Laura thought she had me cornered. She thought she could frame me, rob me blind, and walk away like she had done with every man before me. But now she was the one with her back against the wall. After my lawyer Phil told me Laura was under criminal investigation, things started moving fast. The cops weren't just looking at her false accusations against me anymore. They were looking at her entire history. Fraud, perjury, conspiracy. She had paid a private investigator to fabricate evidence against me. She had done it before to other men. And once the police connected the dots, she wasn't just facing a messy divorce. She was facing prison time. I found out a few days later when Phil called me again. "You're gonna want to hear this," he said. "Laura's been officially charged with attempted fraud and filing a false police report." I smirked. "How bad is it?" "Well, let's just say she might want to get comfortable in an orange jumpsuit." That was her problem now. I had bigger things to focus on. A week later, we were in court. Laura sat across from me at the table, looking nothing like the smug woman who had once waltzed into my kitchen with her lover, thinking she had one. Now, she looked desperate, hollow. Her expensive lawyer sat beside her, flipping through documents, probably trying to salvage what little they could. But the moment the judge entered the room, I knew how this was going to go. The evidence spoke for itself. Laura had lied. She had cheated. She had tried to destroy me, and the court wasn't going to reward her for it. Her lawyer tried to argue for a settlement. "She's entitled to a fair division of assets," he droned on, trying to sound convincing. "She contributed to the marriage." Phil cut him off. "Your Honor," my lawyer said smoothly, standing up, "Mrs. Turner has a documented history of defrauding her previous spouses. She has conspired to fabricate allegations against my client. And thanks to the ongoing criminal investigation against her, we believe any financial settlement should reflect the fact that she was the one who engaged in fraudulent and malicious behavior." The judge nodded. Then he turned to Laura. "Mrs. Turner, given the evidence presented, I see no reason why you should be awarded any additional financial support. The court rules in favor of Mr. Turner. You will receive nothing beyond what is legally mandated." "What?" The judge barely looked at her. "Your alimony request is denied. You are also solely responsible for any outstanding debts incurred in your name. Furthermore, all joint assets are awarded to Mr. Turner." I watched as the realization hit her. She had lost everything. Her lawyer whispered something in her ear, but I could tell from the look on his face that even he knew this was a lost cause. Laura swallowed hard. "Your Honor, if I could just—" The judge held up a hand. "This matter is settled. Court is adjourned." And just like that, it was over. When we walked out of the courthouse, Phil patted me on the back. "Hell of a win, Jack." I nodded. "Couldn't have done it without you." Across the hall, I spotted Laura. She was sitting on a bench, her head in her hands. And her lover? Gone. That's right, he hadn't even bothered showing up. The moment Laura was no longer useful to him, he vanished. She had gambled everything and lost. I could have walked past her without a word. But I didn't. I stopped. She looked up, eyes hollow, makeup smudged from tears she hadn't let anyone see in court. "Jack," she said softly. "Please." I tilted my head. "Please what?" She swallowed hard. I made a mistake." I let out a low chuckle. "A mistake," I repeated. "Laura, a mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is buying the wrong brand of coffee." I leaned in slightly. "You tried to destroy me." Tears welled up in her eyes. I cut her off. "Save it." Then I walked away, and I didn't look back. A month later, the dust had finally settled. I got the house. I got full custody of our son. And Laura? She had nothing. Her reputation? Ruined. Her job? Gone. And when the criminal charges caught up with her, She had to sell what little she had left just to afford a lawyer. She had spent years scheming against good men, and now karma had finally caught up with her. As for me, I was free. For the first time in years, I didn't have to look over my shoulder. I didn't have to wonder if the woman I loved was lying to my face. I could just live. And as I stood outside my house, watching my son play in the yard, I realized something.